The Bible, love it or hate it, is a book filled with puzzles and mysteries. It will be our task to unravel as many of them as possible. We want to understand the Bible as a human book, not a book inspired by a God. I'm Robert M. Price, and this is The Human Bible. I am your host, Robert M. Price, and this is The Human Bible. The Human Bible is a radio show and podcast of the Center for Inquiry, a think tank advancing science, reason, freedom of inquiry, and humanist values in public affairs and at the grassroots. As we usually do, what say we get up to speed? And you remember the point of that. There's a lot of stuff I'm tempted to take for granted because I've been in this whole thing so long, so many years, so many decades, that I'm a fish in water when it comes to some of these things about biblical criticism. And I've long since learned I mustn't take things for granted, that very intelligent people are at sea just as quickly as dense ones if a teacher assumes they know what they're there to learn, right? So, in fact, stop me if you've heard this one. When I was teaching at a Baptist school, I did introductory Bible classes for freshmen, and these kids were like Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostals, and so on. Fundamentalists, right? Bible waivers, right? And I decided I better gauge where they were at, because given that they all went to Bible-believing churches, they might have a pretty good knowledge of the Bible. I know I did by the time I went to college. So I gave them this Bible knowledge quiz, which I quickly renamed the Bible ignorance quiz after doing it a couple of times, because I would ask questions of varying depth, and holy mackerel, it was amazing. People knew virtually nothing. They couldn't name the 10 Commandments or any of them, really. They had no idea who wrote the Gospels or what Gospels were, and when the Bible was written, any of this stuff. So I'm not going to make the same mistake again if I can help it. A lot of the questions we deal with and the apologetics arguments and all that presuppose acquaintance with certain issues, so I'm trying to provide that at the head of the show, so they give you the prerequisites. And those of you that already know this stuff, it wouldn't hurt you to hear it again from a new perspective with some good smart-ass remarks in it. Well, a while ago, I was doing this form critical thing. I was trying to introduce the method of biblical study where you determine what sort of a piece of literature am I reading, because often the rules of the genre will govern how you're supposed to understand the thing. If you try to take poetry as prose, it's not going to work. And if you think a parable is literal history, you're getting all kinds of headaches you weren't supposed to get. Right? And so I went into, among other things, the Psalms, because, here's a favorite of a lot of people who read it devotionally, and they want to connect with God through these lyrics, and they kind of think they're poems or prayers or something, and a lot of it works that way. Search me, O Lord, and know if there's any wicked way in me, and things like that. But then you run smack dab into these hidden reefs and boulders, references to the king and warfare and stuff like this. What is going on here? Well, nobody exactly knows, but we do have a lot of information about the form of these texts, that a lot of them, maybe almost all of them, were really written for the king of Judah to sing, or at least to be sung for him by the Levitical choirs in the temple and so forth. Other theories that some of them were hymns of various kinds to be sung again by the staff singers in the temple, but on behalf of any worshiper who could go in and say, look, I'm in trouble. I wonder, would you sing one of the laments to God for me, asking for help because I can't put it into words. Or, oh, man, things are going great for me. I want to make a thanks offering and to have you sing one of the Thanksgiving psalms, stuff like that. And we dealt with a bunch of them, but one of them I don't think we ever got to, and I wanted to mention it, was the genre or the form of wisdom psalms. There are some that are poetic, but they don't seem to have had any ritual occasion. I don't know that they were ever really, I don't know that any scholar has envisioned a scenario in which these would actually have been sung. They actually come closer to being autonomous poetry, the kind of thing people are looking for in all the Psalms. Why are these so different? Well, they're about wisdom and the Torah or the Jewish law and things like that. Some of them involve some prayer to God, but a lot of them are just meditations on the wise life and righteousness and so on. And a lot of them would really fit almost better in the book of Proverbs for obvious reasons. And that is because they seem to have been written by scribes, the same ones by whom and for whom the book of Proverbs was written. People that were conversant with the Psalms, well, yeah, they heard them sung in the temple, but they were the people that copied them. Of course, that's what a scribe literally means, though the term becomes broader in use, somebody that is really conversant with the scriptures. But it stems from being a copyist, right? No Xerox machines, no printing presses, no e-books or anything back then. You had to have copies made. The old ones would wear out. You had to have new ones. You had to have several of them. And so there were people who were professional scribes. And of course, there were secular scribes, too, that did contracts and all that. But these guys were temple scribes in all probability, and they made copies of the Psalms. They compiled the Psalm book together that contains 150 Psalms, and it looks like they put their own stamp on it by adding these few wisdom Psalms to just, I guess, edify the reader or the singer or whatever, just to have a little extra in there. And I want to read you parts of 3 of them because there's some pretty interesting stuff to point out in them. One is the very first psalm, and of course that makes an awful lot of sense, right? Because the compilers were these scribes and wise men, sages, and all that, and so they're christening the book with one of theirs. And it's a short one. Here it is from the Revised Standard Version. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. He doesn't take their advice. Nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. That'd be me, I guess. But his delight is in the law of Yahweh, and on his law he meditates day and night. He's like a tree planted by streams of waters that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. Pause there. Now, you read that kind of thing all over the Proverbs, right? Honesty is the best policy. It's not just right, but you're going to come out ahead that way. Here you go. You have that right here. Okay, verse 4. The wicked are not so, but like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment. They won't survive it. Right? Nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahweh knows the way of the righteous. Like he keeps an eye on your path if you're righteous. But the way of the wicked will perish. He's headed for his doom. Now, why would that be? Why doesn't it say the believer has a good destination, whereas the unbeliever, the pagan, the heretic, the heathen is in for big trouble? They're not really that interested in that. The scribes, they kind of assume, well, we're all Israelites, Hebrews, Jews, whatever, so the unbelievers are not really in view anyhow. Though oddly, there was in some, like we're going to see the very next one I look at with you, that there is a sense of a larger fellowship of the sages, that you don't have to be a Jew to be wise. Now, if you're not a Jew, you're under no obligation to keep all the rules of the Torah, the ceremonial laws. They didn't expect Arabs to do the sacrifices that the Torah mandated and all that. But there's a lot of wisdom in it that you'll find everywhere among the wise. And so, yeah, the wise are the ones that know not to go down certain blind alleys. They consider the consequences of their actions. Yeah, they know where they're going, so they're going to wind up in a good place. Now, that's a little naive, but that's the way it's supposed to work, right? There are always things that intervene, and it doesn't quite work out that way. And the book of Job and the book of Ecclesiastes are taking up that side of the argument. But, yeah, this sounds a lot like the book of Proverbs. Here's one about the Torah, the law, and it's fairly short, too. This is Psalm 19. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament, the dome over the earth, proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There's no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard. Yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. Let me just pause there. The idea that look at the heavens, the stars and all that stuff. Doesn't that fill you with wonder? It's very much like Immanuel Kant, who said, two things fill me with wonder, the starry heavens above and the moral law within. Well, these guys could have signed onto that. And some centuries later, this kind of scribal wisdom is going to give birth to these strange apocalyptic works where Enoch and other people, other seers and sages, not prophets, mind you, but scribes, interestingly, just like their authors, they go through the heavens guided by an angel, kind of like Scrooge with the various ghosts. And they're shown how the heavens are made up and where the storehouses of the rain and the snow and the stars are kept and all, where the fallen angels are imprisoned. That was part of wisdom because these guys were among the early natural philosophers, like the ones like the Ionian philosophers in Greek. These guys studied the heavens, and wisdom included reading the stars. Astrology was included with this, and divination, telling the future. So they speculated about how the universe must be set up. Well, here's like the seed of it right here. But then we flip over to the text of the Torah, the law, the commandments. The law of, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. I've got to go back up to end of verse 4, in them, that is the heavens, he has set a tent for the sun, which comes forth like a bridegroom leaving his chamber, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and there is nothing hid from its heat. Now we're going to get into the Torah, the commandments. Why this business about the sun? Which, by the way, seems to be derived from Akhenaten's hymn to the sun over in Egypt, right? Because these guys had that international perspective, and they liked what they read there. But why does it have to do with the law? Why does it go on to get into that? Well, because sun gods, for some reason, were believed to be the lawgivers. Apollo was the lawgiver. Moses comes out of the tent, just like this, the tent of meeting, with commandments, and his face is shining, right? This all goes back to that complex of mythemes. If you've ever seen the Code of Hammurabi, it's inscribed on this huge stone table, and there's an illustration at the top of it of the Emperor Hammurabi receiving these laws from whom? Just any old god? No, Shamash, the sun god. Right? So that's why these things are linked together. And then we get into the law. And of course, here's where the scribe is really digging it. The law of Yahweh is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of Yahweh is sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of Yahweh are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of Yahweh is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of Yahweh is clean, enduring forever. The ordinances of Yahweh are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and drippings of the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned. In keeping them there is great reward. But who can discern his errors? And now it passes into a prayer. Clear thou me from hidden faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. Then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgressions. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer. So, this is a lyric by somebody that just loves that Torah, and it's pretty great poetry. Now, this, I don't want, I'm too old to spend the time reading this whole thing, but there's another masterpiece. I mean, you wouldn't really think anybody could wax so lyrical about the Torah, would you? I mean, even if you think it's important, right? There's all kinds of commandments in there that are pretty mundane, and puzzling. Thou shalt not see the goat in its mother's milk. Oh, yeah, boy, I tell you, that's a thrill. Nonetheless, the scribe who loves this waxes eloquent. Let me just read you the beginning of Psalm 119. Blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in, that is, live according to the law of Yahweh. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with their whole heart, who also do no wrong, but walk in his ways. Thou hast commanded thy precepts to be kept diligently. Oh, that my ways may be steadfast in keeping thy statutes. Then I shall not be put to shame, having my eyes fixed on all thy commandments. I will praise thee with an upright heart when I learn thy righteous ordinances. I will observe thy statutes. Oh, forsake me not utterly. Boy, there's all kinds of good stuff in here. Well, let me just read you a little bit more of this to show you the heart of the person writing this. How can a young man keep his way pure? Now, that's a big thing with the book of Proverbs. There's a lot of talk about young people, young men, the only ones that were educated, and how they can avoid the traps of youth. Well, again, it's just like Proverbs. This could fit there almost. How can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to thy word. With my whole heart I seek thee. Let me not wander from thy commandments. I have laid up thy word in my heart that I might not sin against thee. Blessed be thou, O Yahweh. Teach me thy statutes. With my lips I declare all the ordinances of thy mouth. Right? He's a teacher. He's publicly teaching these commandments. In the way of thy testimonies I delight as much as in all riches. I will meditate on thy precepts and fix my eyes on thy ways. I will delight in thy statutes. I will not forget thy word. This goes on for 176 verses, and it doesn't wear out. I don't know how anybody could have done this, but the same sentiments are paraphrased again and again and again. Now, I heard a guy do a series of sermons on the whole psalm, and that got tiring pretty quick. But this is just beautifully written and repetitive and yet not redundant. At the end, we start hearing some nastiness. How, oh boy, I hate those who don't love the commandments of God and so forth. In this, I think you find, if you're a New Testament fan and you are looking at the gospel portrait of the Pharisees, you ought to read this because it shows the heart of the Pharisees. They wanted nothing more than to live every minute of every day according to the commandments of God. And did some of them look down on people who didn't? Well, yeah, that's a very common temptation to religious folks. So if you want to see the mind and heart of such a person, they weren't just caricatures. This kind of wisdom psalm is really perfect. I think it's really a window into the soul of people like that. So, an important kind of psalm. Well, apologetics. What do we say about that? Apologetics is never having to say you're sorry. Now, speaking of Proverbs, here's something somebody asked me about just recently. In the Epistle to the Romans, there's a quote from Proverbs. So really, you could take it out of either source, but I just copied it out of Romans 12, verses 19 through 20. Is there any way of getting out of this? Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. No, quote, and here's the Proverbs thing, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals upon his head. Oh, boy. Now, what's the problem? I guess I don't even need to ask. It's just rhetorical. This would be a classic case of what Nietzsche said about the slave morality and the cowardice of piety. Oh, yeah, I'm going to turn the other cheek. You're my enemy, but I'm going to help you out here. Because I'm really giving you enough rope to hang yourself. You're nasty to me, I'm nice to you, you're really going to catch it when God punishes. Now, I could refuse to feed you, right? But that wouldn't be nearly as good as God kicking your butt on the day of judgment or whatever, seeing you come to a nasty end. I'm just going to make you even more guilty by having you accept my hospitality. Yeah, that's pretty awful. Nietzsche would say, why don't you just strike back? I mean, it'd be better if you were above the fray, right? If you were the Ubermensch. And you can't be bothered with the abuse of these nothings. But if you were to be riled up, at least be honest, for Pete's sake. So, yeah, this looks kind of bad. Now, it looks bad to devout Bible believers, too. They don't want to believe this. I mean, they're not looking at this as some excuse to get somebody in deeper. I mean, I've never met one who did. And it speaks well of them that they have a problem with this. Surely Paul and the Holy Spirit and so forth are not advising us to just set up our persecutors or our enemies for a worse kick in the butt. And so here's the apologetic. Here's the apologist's argument. Oh, no. Paul merely means, and perhaps the proverb meant, that you will shame the person who abuses you by turning the other cheek and loving your enemy sincerely now. They're going to feel like a real jerk. Their cheeks will burn with shame, and that's what it means to heap burning coals on somebody's head. Well, it's not impossible, I guess, but I just can't think that that's not a dodge, especially since, now again, I don't know what the writer of the proverb had in mind, or the coiner of the proverb, whatever it is, because they often have no context. They're just wise and witty sayings, right? But in the context of Romans 12, I think it's pretty clear, right? He couples it with this... Well, no, wait a minute. The whole quote, the whole quote is here, vengeance is mine, I will repay. I guess it's two different texts, isn't it? Yeah, okay, I was right the first time, sorry. Vengeance is mine, I will repay. The fact that the writer brings that in and links it to this thing about feeding and giving drink to your enemy, the point seems to be, you're heaping the coals of God's vengeance on his head. You're going to make it worse for him when God squares the accounts. So I'm afraid it is unworthy nastiness. I just don't think in context, which is supposed to mean so much, right? Context is king, we hear preachers say, and usually they're right. But if the context means anything, this is just spiteful nastiness in the name of supposedly benevolent religion. Now, don't get the idea I'm trying to indict the Bible and all Bible believers. It's just that if you believe the whole darn thing is inerrant and infallible, you're going to start having to perjure your conscience by coming up with lame rationalizations like this. Here is a question from the mysterious Nahor, an ex-Mormon, who asks, I was reviewing the Sermon on the Mount this weekend, and Matthew 6:22 struck me as a verse I have never understood. What does it mean for the eye to be the light of the body? What does it mean in verse 23 that the light can be darkness? Did the people of the New Testament believe that light and dark were different things than we know them to be now? Did they think that dark was radiated from somewhere rather than just an absence of light? Oh, that is so incredibly interesting. I read a novel once where they made some kind of thing like that there was a dark sun that you couldn't see that radiated evil and all that. And this is just really interesting. I think I did a sermon on this once. But let's take a look at the whole passage, a short one, Matthew 25:15. The eye is the lamp of the body, light in that sense. So if your eye, I think I'm reading this, I got this from the New American Standard Bible. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is sound, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is not sound, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? I think this is an example of metonymy, where one variety of which has the inner stand for the outer. And so when they say that if your eye is sound, you won't be in darkness, but literally it's saying darkness won't be in you. I think it's the same sort of idea as in the Gospel of John. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So everything will be clear to you. If you are blind, you appear to be in darkness, and darkness appears to be in you. In fact, if you start losing your sight, it appears some kind of mist is congealing around your brain or something. It's not getting dark out there. Apparently it's getting dark in here. So I think that's the idea of the light in the body or the darkness in the body. You're really in the light or the darkness. But what about the eye part of it? Well, it fits the metaphor. If the inner outer thing is metonymy, the eye being the lamp is metaphor, right? It's a comparison of analogous things. The eye is like the lamp. Okay, I guess that's pretty obvious. But what do they mean the eye is sound, or if the eye is not sound? Well, on one level, of course, if you're grossly nearsighted or you're blind or something like that, your eye is unsound. It's not healthy. But this does have a known metaphorical significance beyond that. And here's a verse to compare it with also in Matthew 25:15. This is in the parable of the laborers in the vineyard, where the guy goes out, 3-hour intervals. He needs farm workers to harvest his crop. He doesn't have regular hands on salary. He goes out and gets day laborers, and he gets them later and later in the day until finally he needs them when there's only 1 hour left. He's got to get it done, and then he has the paymaster come out and give everybody their wages. Well, the guys that have been laboring in the sun all day are shocked when they give the same wage to all the workers, including the guys that worked 1 lousy hour. And they start complaining, and the guy says, "What, it's my money. Didn't you agree with me for so-and-so amount? So what if I'm giving it to the guys that worked only a day? That's really none of your business." And he says, "Is your eye evil because I am good?" The evil eye. Well, it doesn't mean that in this case. The image was a sound eye is a generous one. An unsound or evil eye means you're squinting as a miser, right? It's not too tough to figure out the point of the metaphor. And surely that's got to be the point in Matthew, because this thing about the eye is sound or not sound is placed smack dab in the middle of a bunch of sayings about generosity, almsgiving, and stuff like that. So I think that's the point. You're just going to be out of kilter and misperceive everything. If you're stingy, you're going to be walking in darkness. If you're generous, you're seeing things clearly, because this is the way God wants you to be, and other people will like you, and so on. So I think that's what's in view there. Well, that's in the Bible, but is that in the Bible? One of the favorite segments, according to listener surveys on the Human Bible. And this time, I don't know why I didn't think of this one before. Maybe I did and I forgot. I don't know. Does St. Peter admit people to heaven? Is he up there at the pearly gates, turning some folk away, letting some in? I mean, that's the way we always hear about it in movies and stories. Yeah, St. Peter's up there at the pearly gates. Is that anywhere in the Bible? Well, no, but you can see where they got it. There is the passage in Matthew 16. Oh boy, I forgot the actual verse, but it's chapter 16. This is after. This is in Matthew's version of Peter's confession. It's kind of expanded from the original shorter version in Mark. And he's congratulating Peter because when he asks, who do you guys think I am? And he says, well, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And he congratulates him. Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, and so on. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. What is that all about? Well, Arthur Draws, I think you say it. It's spelled D-R-E-W-S, but I can never quite remember. I think it's Drews or Draws in Dutch. He wrote a really interesting comparative religion study of the character of Peter. I believe it's called The Legend of Simon Peter. Frank Zindler translated it for American Atheist Press some years ago. And Drews suggests that there are mythemes that have been applied to Pete that have their original home in Mithraism and in Roman religion, because Mithras and Janus and others had the keys to heaven and would meet souls leaving the body and usher them in. Janus also had these keys of heaven because he had the two faces, and he would let one year out and another one in, and so on. He thought that Peter is simply a kind of Christian version of that myth, and there was no Peter. Well, I'm pretty close to that myself, actually, but not for that reason. I won't go into it here, though I have on the Human Bible before. I think Simon Peter, or Simon Cephas, is a kind of reworked version of one of the so-called heirs or pillar apostles of Jerusalem, Simeon Bar Cleophas, one of the bishops, if you want to call him that, of the Jerusalem church, who may well have been a historical figure, albeit fictively associated with Jesus, whether he was historical or legendary, and that's getting off into another whole can of worms, right? But it's, if you just want to know, is this trying to say Peter is the doorman for the heavenly apartment complex? No. No, you have to go a little closer to home. This is rabbinic terminology. To have the kingdom of heaven is in Jewish terms of the time. It means like the faithful Jewish life. You took on your shoulders the yoke of the kingdom of heaven if you undertook to be a pious Jew. And how would you know what was the pious thing to do, the Jewish thing to do? Well, there were scribes, later rabbis, who had the keys and could bind and loose. That is, they could determine what you could and could not do on the Sabbath. Now, the Scripture said you weren't to work on the Sabbath, but gee, what exactly does that mean? Can't work at your job for pay. Well, of course it means that, but does it mean you can't build something or go out and have recreation, something on your own property? Well, these guys would weigh this and make these decisions, and you find that in the Mishnah, part of the Talmud, right? So they had the ability to bind and loose for fellow Jews who wanted guidance. To bind means to bind someone, to give them an obligation. The Torah says you must do this. To loose is a way of saying, look, you don't need to worry about this. I'm declaring this all right. This food is kosher. Go ahead. And it could also denote excommunication, binding and loosing. There's a use of this, I think, in Luke, where Jesus is chewing out the Pharisees, maybe in Matthew 23, too, I don't remember, where it says, you bind great burdens on men's shoulders, but don't lift a finger to carry them yourselves. Well, that's talking about hypocrisy, kind of like today when congressmen who voted for Obamacare want to be exempt from it, right? It's the same sort of thing. But that's the point, the binding and loosing. Peter, and more likely his envisioned successors in the church at Antioch, I think, are being given rabbinic authority. You guys can decide. We will do what you say. Can we eat with Gentile believers? You decide. We'll do what you say. So Peter and his successor bishops have the authority to make religious legal decisions. The kingdom of heaven means, in a Jewish setting like this, not the kingdom in the sky. I mean, sometimes it does mean that, but in a case like this, it means the heavenly order, the divine order of the Torah. So I'm glad we got that one straight, right? That's a real toughie. Matthew has almost always paraphrased the phrase kingdom of God that he found in Mark and Q and made it into kingdom of heaven because of one of those rabbinic decisions. They decided, it says you're not to take the name of Yahweh, your God, in vain, but what exactly does that mean? Well, let's play it safe and never use it at all, except the high priest can utter it in the Holy of Holies on the Day of Atonement, but otherwise, no. Just like in Monty Python's Life of Brian, right? But all I said was this halibut is good enough for Jehovah, right? Oh, no, that's blasphemy. Yeah, because this was one of the binding and loosing decisions, in this case, binding. Well, because of that, Matthew doesn't like even the word God, theos. That's too chancy for him, and so he replaces it with heaven. So kingdom of heaven really means the kingdom of God, which tends to mean, the same place you're already at, but seen through the lens of the Torah and obedience to it. So, well, what say we check the old score, a prophetic scorecard. This time I like to do this in one of two ways. Does the Bible really predict so-and-so that people say is predicted? Or, assuming that it does, did it get it right? Well, this is kind of both at the same time. You will find among fundamentalists, especially dispensationalists, and by this, I mean these books, writers of books on the end times in particular, I'm thinking of, like Hal Lindsey and so on. There's zillions of these books. And they say, oh yeah, the things predicted in the book of Revelation and elsewhere are all going to happen, but they were predicted for our day, not the time of the original writers and readers. Which comes in pretty handy, right, since they're all dead. And if it pertained only to their time, we're up the creek without a paddle, right? So, it has to refer to our day. And everything that happens in the last days up to the time of Jesus. Of course, the New Testament writers thought they were in the last days, right? They didn't envision some 2,000 friggin' years, at least until the second coming. But so this, you already know there's going to be a shell game here. Well, among those things they figure are predicted in the book of Revelation is that the Roman Empire, famously fallen, crumbling under the assault of the barbarians and all that stuff, it will rise again in the last days. And that probably means, they used to say the common market. Today, I guess they'd probably say the European Union. I read most of this stuff, I guess, back in the 70s, like all my fellow teenage fundamentalists. What a great movie that would be, right? I was a teenage fundamentalist. I read Hal Lindsey's late great Planet Earth. We all did. And in it, he has all these predictions, and, oh man, we could just go on for whole episodes about that. But he's typical in saying the Roman Empire will rise again. Now, why? Why would this be? Well, simply because in the book of Revelation, the predicted return of Christ means the laying low of the Roman Empire, the empire of the beast, who is very thinly veiled as the Roman emperor. There's imagery that suggests Nero, but the book of Revelation already has the same kind of thing with a revived Nero. He'd been killed 30 years before. It was probably written in the time of Domitian at the turn of the century. And there's these big hints that say Domitian was like a new Nero, a real villain and a bum. And he's the beast and so forth. The mark of the beast is a Roman commerce stamp. There's all kinds of indications that the writer was thinking of events of his own day, and an invasion from Parthia across the Euphrates, which was a common fear of the Romans. There's an awful lot of contemporary references, and none about the remote future. You see, so there's the problem. Christ is going to come very quickly, the book says many times. And when he does, he's smashing the Roman Empire underfoot. Well, guess what happened? Take a look at the map. Take a look at the calendar. It didn't come true. Right? So, prophetic scorecard, that's a big 0. Now, since obviously people who believe in the Bible as inspired, inerrant, infallible, just cannot afford to understand that that's what the text says. Despite all the clues, look, I know it's a book filled with obscure symbolism, but really it's not that bad. You do a little homework and you can see what it's talking about for the most part. If it's infallible and inerrant, it can't have been that wrong, right? And so they say, okay, you see, what it really meant was that whenever Christ does come back, there's gonna be a Roman Empire for him to kick to smithereens. So, there you go. Christ is going to come back soon relative to our day. And when he does, well, there's got to be a Roman Empire there to meet him. So what have we got here that looks like it might be a good candidate? Oh, common market or European Union. So you see, the whole thing is just, this could have fit just as well under apologetics as never having to say or sorry. It's theological butt covering for the drastic failure of the prophecy of the second coming of Christ happening by the end of the century, the first century. And that is scarcely that's embarrassment is scarcely only that of the writer of Revelation, right? That problem pops up all over the New Testament. But insofar as what it really did predict, second coming of Christ, coinciding with the fall of the Roman Empire, not even close. Sorry. Now, I love the book of Revelation. It's just filled with terrific symbolism and so on. You might not know it, but I really love the Bible. I just don't believe it any more than I believe the Iliad or the Odyssey, which I also love. It just, I don't see how the two have to go together. In fact, I find that if you can drop your illusions about the Bible, you will probably love it even more. For its own sake, as a piece of history and literature, you'll have, what should we say, an impartial interest, no vested interest, no urgency that you gotta make sense of this, because when you do, you know what kind of a source of continual migraines that is. The pressure's off if you say, oh yeah, okay, it's not literally true, maybe it's not even supposed to be literally true, but it isn't, and so understanding what it really means, oh man, is that fun. I think you know that as loyal Human Bible listeners. And what are we saying? It's a human Bible, not a divine one. So I'll see you next time on the next mind-opening, thought-provoking, and loads of fun episode of The Human Bible. Thanks for joining me on this episode of The Human Bible. To send us questions or comments on the show, which we really hope you do, you can email questions@thehumanbible.net or feedback@thehumanbible.net. We're also on Twitter @HumanBible, on Facebook @/TheHumanBible, And you can even leave a voicemail on our Human Bible hotline by calling 716-71-BIBLE. You can get all that information and more on our website, thehumanbible.net. Views expressed on the Human Bible aren't necessarily the views of the Center for Inquiry, nor its affiliated organizations. The Human Bible is produced by Adam Isaac in Amherst, New York, and features contributions from Debbie Goddard. I'm your host, Robert M. Price.